What do you think about a cap? Okay, I know we've kind of had a little bit of this conversation, but a cap hasn't solved things. And then why doesn't the union never comes out and really says much? And I always am like, you guys need to say more. You need to say more. And it seems like the owners win the PR battle because they're out there. Rob Manfred's stumping for a cap, right? He has his cap people out there doing their thing. So how do we, obviously I'm on the player side because I'm a former player, but how do we as players get that out there, and how do we tell people, like, because people come up to me and I'm not as deep in this as you are, and they're like, well, baseball needs a salary cap, and then I try to explain the other side, and when you explain it a little bit to them, they're like, oh, you know what, you might have a good point there. So why is it cap, 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 and then why doesn't the union come out and say, hey, this is the reason why we're against the cap?
You know, uh, the Major League Baseball Players Association is really in a good place. Why? We have record revenues, we have record attendance. We have Bruce Myers and Matt Nussbaum and Jeff Bercani and Ian Penny. We have people who've been through bargaining agreements now multiple times, and they really understand. They really understand what salary caps are. And what I try to do from an external part, and certainly this is the union and the MLB that are the tridents of what the resolve of this is going to be. But the truth of the matter is that we have so much evidence about the misapplication of league conduct, particularly with parity, because that's always the argument is parity. And I'll save this for another show when we're doing this in the off season, but I have got so much information and research. I prepared a whole arbitration case on salary cap. And so the reality of it is parity is far worse, far worse. The lack of parity is far worse in a salary cap environment than it is in a free environment. Why? Because owners can individually make adjustments to allow their team to be better. They can do all those things. The other part of it is that every league is full of big markets and small markets. They all are. But the key to all this is not anything to do with what other is that the ills of our game are resolved by revenues. Our media rights were exposed. Our inability to acquire the true valuation of our media rights was exposed by the NBA contract. They got 8 billion because they offered the league. We offer regional. And so consequently, we're getting half at 4 billion, and yet our content is double, and yet our ratings are there. And we also offer 200 million people more from Asia, Korea, Taiwan, Japan, and Canada, that those are markets that the NFL and the NBA do not own. They don't own Canada. They don't own Asia. They don't own that like we do. And so we offer that to all the media conglomerates where they can take their product and optimize it by this grand market that no other sport has. What's the value of that? The value of that was not ascertained. That's the problem with our sport. Because if we have 20 billion to deal with versus 4, all the ills of what a lot of owners struggle with today will be resolved, and it will not be a labor issue. And so in 2028, we're going to have something that's going to give us definition, clear definition as to what the revenues of this game are. And therefore, we'll have the ability then to adjust and know more about what our labor situation would be and how that the inner workings of it should apply for equities for all clubs. And so the real issue for me is that how do we define the revenues of the game and how do we optimize it and how do we set up a system that is far different from what we used before to negotiate, truly negotiate the value of our rights, which will then propel this game to levels that it's never seen before.
Did you see, because you're always doing future evaluations, future values of things. Did you see the market working out the way that it did for so well, but a year later for Pete Alonso, for Matt Chapman, for Alex Bregman, for Blake Snell? Did you feel like that's what was going to happen? And you said before that it's almost like a concerted effort somewhat against Scott. against the Boras Corp, that did you feel like that 1 year gap was going to be needed to get the value that you assumed, and actually a higher value just a year later?
Eric, it's you're raising another great point, is that it is so hard to tell players that you're so good, you're so good that your free agent right is limited by the qualifying offer. You carry with you now draft compensation, where you now have a tent throwing over your freedom. And you're so good that the system has done this to our best players. So it's our system, it's what we bargained for. So I've got to create a path around it. I'm sitting there with Carlos Correa, and I said, look, I need to I created the opt out with Alex Rodriguez in his contract and use that right contractually. I said, this is perfect for this right, but I guess what? I'm going to have your free agency when you're really good is 7 years. It's not 6, it's 7 years. You're going to have to go in to get your value, because they're going to come in and offer you roughly 40 cents, 50 cents on the dollar for your free agent value and hope you take it. So I'm going to have to do a system, an approach to this that's going to allow you to bridge this to get a freedom in value. But here's the data, here's your age, here's your performance levels, here's what we think. And in some instances, you may sign, but in most instances with these gifted players, I'm going to say to them that you have to go back and talk about who you are, what you're doing. And with Bregman and Alonso and Snell and Chapman and Correa, we all did the bridge contracts with the opt-outs, and teams benefited from that because they got great skill. A free agent that's worth $200-300 million, they get him for a 1 year value. It's great for them, but you have to go back to what we bargained. We bargained for that. I always hate to see the greatest players get injured by something we bargained for, but the fact of the matter is we bargained for it, so we have to accept it. We have to work through it, and I'm so happy that you want motivation to watch something every night. When you have a player in a bridge contract who's a great player, and you're watching him, you every night, oh, that game is a different game for you, because you're making decisions that have a dramatic effect on his family, where it could make literally anywhere from 50 to $150 million difference in how their family is going to be for the rest of their lives. And that's what makes this game fun for me. You got a knot in your stomach all the time, and you wake up with it, and you hope by the end of the day, that it's something that's you've quelled. But it's no different than an at bat. You go in, and I remember facing Bob Welch, and I'm sitting there in Double A, and I'm going, and I got a big knot in my stomach. But you sit there at second base, and you get a bases loaded double, and you go there and you go like, oh, life's great. So same thing when these guys come through, and they get it done. They're such champions. They're there, and what all those guys did, I have great respect for them, because you know what? They bet on themselves. They believed in themselves. They had a choice not to. They could have taken far less and secured it, but they chose to prove who they were, and they've all been rewarded for it.
That's awesome. Now, what do you think about where we're at in pitchers and catchers reporting, and some guys are starting to sign like fast, right? And you have some guys left out there. Do you believe that there's a pressure on people, and how do you keep your clients that are still free agents from panicking, like you said, and trying to get what their value is, instead of the panic move, I mean, I have to get in on a team here before it gets too late?
You know what I find, AJ, the greater the player, the greater the trust. And I've always used this metaphor. When you're the steak, you don't really care what dinner time is. You know, you kind of sit there, you walk through it, you know who you are, you know what you're doing, you trust yourself, and you wait for that optimum moment that requires something that you as a player feel is equitable for you to make a move. And markets are so different. Sometimes they're early, like with Cease. I had an early market this year, and I have a great performer. I mean, Cease and Gallen are the two most durable pitchers in the game. They really are. Cease signs early. Gallen is still going to get something done here soon. But the durability, I mean, when you're in the postseason and you have pitchers that can throw 140, 150 innings, they're not available for the postseason. When you have players like Gallen and Cease, when they can throw the 180 every year, those are the guys that are going to be available for you in the postseason, and they have postseason experience, excellence. And then when you're trying to win, you want that type of player, no question.
How soon? How soon is Gallen ready? And how has his offseason gone in the sense of calls for you? Has it been more silent because of how the Cease negotiations went? It was so early, and now you're saying possibly Gallen will sign soon. Why was it quiet for him based on this offseason for him?
Well, I think that when your platform season, he finished with like a top 10 ERA the last 2 months of the season. He had an issue early on in the season with his fastball command, which he corrected. And so when you go to look at those kinds of things, the clubs are going to want to know what adjustments were made. What is it? How do you do it? And the idea of it is that he has, guess what? The qualifying offer. He has the qualifying offer. And when you have the qualifying offer, you can better believe. I have the media say, oh my God, Boras can't get his player signed. He can't do this. He can't do that. But whenever you have a player with a qualifying offer, guess what? It's going to be something where the teams are going to go for players where they don't have to give up draft status. They don't have to give up draft picks. They're going to go there first, obviously, because that way they get to sign free agents without giving up draft picks. But sometimes it comes down to where a lot of clubs have to decide, am I going to give up a draft pick or am I going to compete for the playoffs? And that's really where Zach Gallen's at. A lot of these clubs, a lot of them are wholly different in who they are in their playoff abilities versus giving up a second or third round draft pick. And they have to make that decision. They hesitate. It's always usually late, but no different than Snell or Alonso or Bregman, whatever. A great performer like Zach Gallen has a qualifying offer on him, and he's in the same position all of them they're in. That's the truth.
By the way, I'd love to hear you and Max Scherzer talk. You guys must talk for like 3 days when you guys get on the phone with each other. I mean, because you guys just would go, and it would be all entertaining. So I would love to just be a fly on the wall and listen to those conversations, because I guarantee you, between you and Max, it's nonstop. So I don't know what to say about that. But Luis Robert, you have Luis Robert as a client. You had him out at Boras camp. And as a White Sox fan and somebody that has always wanted Luis Robert to be a superstar, what did he do this offseason? Because everyone's like, oh, he's in great shape and he's going to be great for the Mets and this and that. But what did he change this offseason at Boras camp?
Well, we took over Luis about over a year ago, and we found something. And we found something that we brought to him about, July of last year, about how to get him back to being himself and what the difference was in his approach and what he was doing in the batter's box and how he managed himself. And I'm no hitting coach and never intend to be, but in our study and evaluation of him, we knew when he was elite and how he performed elite at the big league level. We had that in our library to be able to illustrate to him that these adjustments are truly him, not what he was doing currently. And boy, he had like well over an 800 OPS for the rest of the season and did great. And I think the Mets saw this, but the best thing is when you talk about Max Scherzer, the thing you learn about greatness from all of them, from Maddox and many of the people that I've had the great fortune, Garrett Cole, you learn from greatness about how you talk to players and what you do when they have great ability and how to approach it and what's effective. And you have that route and path where you have to confront them sometimes, but you also have to understand and listen and give them a choice and a pathway where they choose, they're invested, and they go. And also, I have Juan Soto at our Boras Sport Performance Camp, and we have one in Florida, we have one in Arizona, we have one in in California. I have Juan Soto and Luis Robert together. Ironically, they're going to be teammates. To watch Juan Soto work out every day, to watch what Juan Soto does, to sit down and talk to Juan Soto about how he approaches his control of the zone, what he's done. I remember talking to Juan Soto when he was 17 about how Barry Bonds and Willie Mays taught me about zone control and what the benefits of that are and what you do. And Juan Soto adapted that. I mean, Juan Soto didn't walk his first 100 at bats in pro ball. He adopted that to the extreme. And now he gets to share that day to day with Luis Robert. It's relaxing, it's comforting, because now Luis Robert gets to be around a true superstar. He gets to be around somebody that he can go to daily, and he gets to share, and he walks out of the ballpark even after a bad day with comfort and direction, so that he's excited about coming to the ballpark the next day, because he has two things he didn't have in Chicago. He's got the presence of a superstar to rely on, and he has a chance to win every day. And so those are the kinds of things that invigorate players, and in my mind is going to allow Luis Robert to have an extraordinary year because he's a great talent.
Well, what was it? Tell us. Give us the secrets to Boras camp. Maybe I can still play it. If you could figure out something that I could do at 49 years old, maybe I could make a comeback. What was the secret sauce?
Hey, AJ, that flat bat swing getting top that high fastball, you knew how to do that, brother. Good for you.
I like it.
I remember I was a left-handed hitter too. I saw that. I go, you had that bat speed. Most catchers don't have that bat speed to get on top of that heater. You did, no doubt. But in every case, obviously, when you go through these things personally with players, you certainly don't want pitchers to know a lot of things about what their adjustments are. So I'll keep this confident.
That's fair. That's very fair.
Yeah. Scott, I let these guys mostly cook and ask the questions. I just have one more that I want to ask you, because many fans that just went through free agency see their teams not participate much. So I know we went into some parts of this already, but almost like trying to remove some of the CBA component to it. When there are plenty of teams you do deals with all of them technically, but some obviously come and kind of say, hey, we don't have much, right? Like, do you believe them? Should fans believe them? And if they really don't have anything to spend in free agency, is it a revenue sharing issue? Because then it seems like the big market teams feel as if they've shared a lot of revenue and it doesn't always get spent, which I know we've talked about. So basically, I'm just trying to rep the fans that felt like they didn't have fun in this free agent period, and what your take is on it when you're having conversations with the decision makers about it.
Well, Scott, I think the fan question is, what are their revenues? And the answer is, the way the CBA works, when the Mets and the Dodgers spend, and they have literally hundreds of $1,000,000 in taxation, that money goes to a pool that's distributed to who? The clubs who are not the major market clubs. They get those revenues back to them, in addition to getting how much in revenue sharing? 50 million, 75 million. So when a club says we're spending 130 and they're getting 80 million in revenue sharing, you're going to go out and find that every club in baseball is making over 250 to 350 million dollars. But they're I saw a percentage of revenue spent in time, so all of a sudden you see where the Cubs are in the bottom third of that, and they're the third or fourth team in revenue. And you go, okay, well, that gets out. Fans are aware. And then maybe the Cubs made some adjustments in signing Bregman. And maybe they'll make more adjustments in signing more people. But the fact of the matter is, when you get down to it, is that it is very clear in today's game that every club can afford one or two free agents, major free agents. They might not be able to afford 5 or 6, but they can afford 1 or 2. And so the reality of that is that when you don't have revenue transparency, you get to say a lot of things. And you get to go through and say that, look, we have a bottom line. We're not going to go that because we want to profit this much from the game. There are owners that clearly do that, because those of us who mine the revenues of the game know what they're making. But unless you're the Atlanta Braves, you can say, well, why are the Braves making 300 and 400 million a year? Why aren't they just making 150 and go and spending on more free agents? Because they're much like the top 5, 6, 7 revenue teams. Why aren't they doing this? And a fan, when you bring transparency, allows them to weigh what the teams are doing. Because for me, I think every owner should have the right to do what he wants to do, but I also believe he should be accountable for doing it. And transparency brings that so that the fans understand about this. I've always believed that in the player community, you are rewarded based on your performance, and you're also penalized based on your performance. We need to bring that to sport. We need rewards for winning. We always talk about rewards for winning. We also need to know that, if I'm the Milwaukee Brewers or Tampa Bay or whatever, and I'm doing things and I'm winning a division, I need to get a big reward for that. Because you know what? I did something that is exactly what we want from the game. We want our clubs that are not in major markets performing like major markets on the field. But we don't apply that. We don't do that. We don't give them reverence for their performance. And I think that also when we have teams that are continually losing, they're continually out of the playoffs. And we give them time, give them 5, 6, 7 years. When you're not in the playoffs, you're getting decreased revenue sharing. You're not doing that because you're not returning to the league a proper plan to make the league better. And that I think is something that I'm not sure a union can do it. I'm not sure a collective bargaining agreement done, but I think the game would be a lot better if owners ran the game and owners said, I only want good operators in this game. That's what I want. I want great operators in this game. Like someone came to me about expansion. What's the greatest expansion market? Well, it's the Bay Area because they have 12 to 14 million people and someone left to go to a smaller market so they could get revenue sharing. I go,
Yes.
if I'm a new owner, I'm not going to give that to the Giants. I'm going to make sure that the greatest expansion franchise and the TV rights are going to move a team to the Bay Area because we have such a volume of fans there to support a great fan base and high TV ratings to do it. So we have all this proper assessment of revenues that is not transparent, that creates questions like you've just given, Scott.